Good morning, everyone. We will begin this time with a brief introduction, with prayer, and with some instructions by Elder Yvette Swavey-Lipton, and then John Fong will lead us in this webinar. We are excited and fortunate to have him. John Fong is a committed professional in church development, vitality, and growth, and we will experience all of that this morning with him. He is a consultant to several churches throughout our synod, and we're grateful that he is also working with several of our congregations throughout the Presbytery of New York City. John, we are grateful that you're with us. We thank you, and we invite you after the few words of introduction and prayer to tell us more about yourself. God bless you. God bless your ministry and work. And we thank you for being with us. Let us pray. Gracious and loving God, we are gathered here together as your servants, your leaders, those whom you have called into ministry and work. We know that throughout this ministry, there will be challenges, there will be situations, but we know that you will guide us, lead us, be with us. And we're grateful this morning to have John Fong to be one of your leaders to help us to indeed remind us, but also, gracious God, to share ideas, creative thoughts, so that your church will continue to grow, continue to be relevant in the community, and to continue to live out the call of Jesus Christ that you have placed upon each of us. Guide us now as we move forward in his name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. Elder Yvette Swavey-Lipton is indispensable throughout this presbytery. And Yvette, we thank you for all that you do. Talk to us and help us so that we will stay connected and be able to enjoy this time together.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Glad to see you here. I just want to give some housekeeping matters. We are going to hear from John. There will be a Q&A after his presentation, so we ask that you hold your questions until that time. If you want to speak, we ask that you use your electronic raised hand and not. There are 3 screens here that I would have to scroll through to see a raised hand. If you electronically raise your hand, you come up on the screen and it comes up in the order. So we ask that you adhere to that practice. In addition, to put your questions or comments and or concerns in the chat, and we will try to get to them as we are able. Thank you. John?
Hey, thank you, everyone. Another housekeeping item. If you're looking for the recording, hopefully, I believe it's being recorded, and the slide presentation, please join our new PNYC Pastors and Leaders Group, and you could access the recording and the slide presentation there. All right. So I'm going to get started because I just did this webinar and we went over time. So I want to make sure that we have plenty of time for Q&A. So welcome to the Grow Your Church in 10 days. And it's really actually, believe it or not, pretty amazing that we could grow our churches in 10 days. So how did I start? I guess many years ago, I was awarded my first innovation grant. And that's when churches were starting to use Facebook. So that was quite a few years. I received the innovation grant from to help 4 New Jersey presbyteries develop what back then was called online ministry. There's, so we now know that online ministry is just regular ministry, right? Part of so a little bit about how this program kind of started. It really started in 2021, and I had been working with churches first innovation grant, and I sort of found my calling. I had a regular full-time job back then, and helping the New Jersey churches develop online ministry, best practices for online ministry, I kind of sort of continued my work on the side with the Synod and PCUSA. And so back in 2021, I started looking at how churches were growing. Our churches were shrinking dramatically, and I was just curious how churches were growing, and cross-denominational, right? And even in, of course, other PCUSA and the hybrid churches. And then 2022 came. And then I was like, oh my goodness, how are these churches growing during the pandemic? Wow, right? And post-pandemic. So anyway, I shared my research with the Synod, and they were like, oh wow, so they awarded me my next innovation grant to pilot a church growth program post-pandemic. And I worked with a handful of churches, and they all grew, and it was successful. So 2020, end of 2022, 23 into 24, the Synod extended the grant to all presbyteries in all churches in the Synod. And here I am. Okay, so I'm gonna, yes. So I'm gonna go and really start talking about the program and how it works. And then I'll kind of address this slide sort of afterwards. So I'm going to about and everything we do in the program is based on actual proven church case studies. I mean, there's a lot of wonderful ideas out there, but this particular program is drawing from our case studies. Things that we talk about here, strategies and processes, are things that other churches are already doing, and they're successful with it. So there's not much experimental stuff here, besides me helping you customize it to your church community. So I'm going to start with the case study, and it's going to be a personal one. How I started going to church. About 20 years ago, my wife and I moved into a small town, New Jersey, called Metuchen, New Jersey. The town's like 3 square miles. So if you were driving, you drive right through it if you didn't slow down. And I think it still has about 16,000 in population. So for New York City, that's like nothing, right? That's your couple of blocks. So anyway, so my wife's like, hey, I found this wonderful church. We're moved in to this town, and ready to start a family kind of thing. And I found this wonderful church. It's called FPC Metuchen. I was like, oh wow, great. My back, I would kind of back then describe or define myself as unchurched. As a child, as a first-generation immigrant, Chinese, we moved around a lot. And I obviously, I was born in the Dominican Republic. Then we moved to New York City. So actually, I spoke Spanish before I spoke any other language. But my nanny's all Spanish. But anyway, we moved to New York City, moved from there, and then moved to Jersey. And as a young child, we went to Lutheran church, Catholic churches, and even Methodist church, but not consistent at all. So my wife's like, hey, and my wife I would define as fully churched. As a child, she went to church every Sunday, took part in every activity the church offered, and she could probably recite the Bible, So she was fully churched, and I thought, oh well, she's a wonderful person. Maybe it'll make me a more wonderful person. So I joined the church. So like any new member or worshiper or visitor to church, I wanted to help. I wanted to do my wife and I wanted to do something, and the first thing we noticed was our church food pantry. Now I've looked at almost all your churches. Anyone who registered just maybe a day ago, I might not have looked at your church, but I've made an assessment of all your churches, did a SNAP assessment, what I call. So I know you're doing, many of you are already dealing, have program ministries for security, food pantries and such, food collection. So we joined our FPC Metuchen food pantry. And at the time, it was the size of a coat closet, probably the bookshelf behind me. That was the size of it. And so, so we were excited. And as an unchurched person, I thought, oh, that this is going to be easy. I'll, when I go shopping, I'll just pick up an extra bag of groceries and donate it to the food pantry. Easy, right? A few weeks into it, the person in charge has been doing it for a long time, and they were a little burnt out. And they asked my wife to help lead our new food pantry. And she was over the moon. She was excited. A new person to church. Right now, she's like helping lead a committee or ministry, whatever. And at the time, I thought it's like, oh, maybe as leaders we'll have to get 2 bags of groceries and drop it off. No big deal, right? So anyway, very quickly we found out that we weren't getting enough food. Even 20 years ago in our little community, there were plenty of families that needed food, and we were having trouble. Luckily, about 20 years ago, we already had email. So I was constantly emailing people, hey, please, we need pasta, we need peanut butter and jelly and whatever. And Facebook was just coming. You can see Twitter was just starting, Facebook was just starting. And so it was really an issue. And anyway, one day after church, church and one of our food pantry meetings, I drove home, and we had just moved into our second house, a little bigger, because we were thinking of starting a family. And as I was walking out of the car, one of my neighbors started waving, hey, a new neighbor. And I was a little frustrated with the church food pantry meeting. I wasn't in the mood to talk, but I knew as a new neighbor, you had to go and say hi. And also, as I was telling Mary before, and is that I'm really an introvert at heart. I'm more animated on Zoom because I'm on Zoom every day. If you met me, I might be a little more, I'll probably be a little awkward. But anyway, so I walked over to my neighbor. We had, small talk, and then out of the frustration, I blurted out, would you mind helping our church food pantry? We have a lot of people in need, and we're just not getting enough food. And my wonderful neighbor's like, Ricardo's like, oh, absolutely. My son's in the Scouts, and we do stuff like this all the time. And then he proceeded pointing out all the different neighbors where I could see for my new house that would help. Oh, they do a lot of community service. This group they work with a lot of causes. They're in the chambers of commerce, and all these different people. I was like, oh wow, this is great. And then as I'm walking back into the house, to my house, I was thinking to myself, as an introvert, I should probably reach out to all my friends and family to help with the food pantry. That's going to be much easier. Anyway, a few weeks have passed. A couple of weeks have passed, really. And I was able to welcome and connect 4 new people to my church and do the food pantry. I was like, oh, wow. So anyway, as I was doing my research on how churches were growing in the beginning of 2021, I noticed that cross-denominationally, all the churches are growing based on this kind of organic, hybrid, relational process. It wasn't formal, it just kind of happened. right? It's just like my church where I reached out to my friends, families, and neighbors, and all of a sudden 4 people came to church because they were interested in helping with the food pantry. So to wrap up my story, so a month later, we had to start an online group, and it was our first time starting a Facebook page. And back then, most people, unless you started back then, Facebook pages back then worked more like Facebook groups. It was very open. There was no algorithm to control who saw the content, things like that, which we do have now. So anyway, and that's how Facebook makes its money, right? Generating ads. Anyway, so we had to start an online group just to communicate with everyone in our little community that wanted to help with our food pantry now. So a few years later, if you could, I welcome you to go and visit FPC Metuchen's Facebook page and website. A few years later, FPC Metuchen had to hire a full-time food pantry director to run the program. And as you know, churches don't hire anyone full-time unless there's a huge need, right? So they had to hire a whole full-time food pantry director. They had to build onto church. The church grew. Now, it wasn't, my wife and I who grew our church, right? It was people like us in all the different ministry in our church. The church gave us an opportunity to do good. And when we did, we realized we need to and wanted to really increase, expand the good we were doing. And the only way we could do that was to get more helpers. I realized very quickly my 1 bag of grocery or 2 bags of weren't going to be enough to feed those families in my community. So that's how the program works. That's it. I'm going to give you quickly a second case study. And again, it's personal. Last year, we moved from New Jersey to upstate New York. I live on Grand Island, New York, which is right next to Niagara Falls, if you don't know the area. And FPC Metuchen, by the time we left, it's about a 1,000-member PCUSA church, which is a pretty good size church. So we went, church shopping for the first time in 20 years, and we found FPC Lewiston, New York. So my wife really again led this church search because I work with all the different presbyteries. I actually work in 3 synods, and a lot. So I try to just keep myself out of the politics and things like that. So and she found FPC Lewiston, and I certainly loved it. And our new church on the books have 40+ members. So it was a huge shock coming from a 1,000-member church to our new church, which only has 40 members. And I understand many of the churches in this webinar probably have, that's the membership, right? And that's why you're here. You want to grow it. And so I'm going to give you a quick case study and how we're growing our church. So FPC Lewiston, New York. And I don't officially work for my church. You can imagine the politics working with I also work for my presbytery. So anyway, so back in December we joined, or 2022. And we immediately said, oh, I was talking to the leadership, and they hadn't had a new visitor 3 years. No new visitor, 3 years. Now, obviously, the pandemic was part of the problem, right? So we said, oh, we need to have some visitors. So we did a little tiny outreach activity / touch point. I'll explain what that is in a second. And we got 4 new visitors. It was a simple Christmas caroling thing. Reach out to the church members. One of the church member belongs to the gardening club in Lewiston. And she told several of her friends. 3 showed up. Another person was another church member's cousin or friend or something. And that person, so in December, we have 4 new visitors. It just kind of shocked it surprised everyone because they hadn't had an event. Anyway, we also at the same time said, oh my goodness, we don't have a Sunday school. We need to start a Sunday school. If a family walked in during Christmas and there was no services for families, they would never, ever come back, right? So, and of course, all our session leaders was like, John and Jen, and my wife's name is Jen, we have no kids. We have no children, I said, and then my wife's like, no problem, not an issue. We'll just have a lesson planned, ready to go if any kids show up. That's it. So, so 2022, no new kids. We had just gotten out 4 new visitors. We've had new visitors every single month since December 2022. This Christmas 2023, we had our first pageant, children's pageant. By the time it was Christmas, we had 12 new families. And one of the slides, you'll see the picture. I also, I'm going to stop that, but that's the case study I'll talk about. So that's how the program works. So I'm going to kind of direct you to the slide in front of you. And so this program is really generally 30 days. And some of you are already in the program. And if you're in the 30-day program, and if you look at the bullets, the first bullets, everything's based on church growth case study. So whatever you're doing, another handful of churches doing the same thing, and this is seating. And we're basically just copying their plan. That's it. I think right now, so many of our churches are struggling. They need something more reassuring that they know that works for other churches like theirs, right? So, and the benchmark, how do we measure growth? We measure growth by, in this case, in the next 10 days, you are going to welcome at least 2 new neighbors or visitors to church. And the hope is that thereafter, at least every month, you will welcome at least 2 new neighbors and visitors every month. And you can see the strategy behind it, right? If you could get 2-3 new neighbors and visitors every single month, right? Some of them are going to fall in love with you and your church and become worshipers and members. And your church will grow. That's the strategy, right? The next bullet talks about automated posting, and that's where the social engagement is. So if your church, and some of your churches, like I said, I did a SNAP assessment, have no exposure at all. I couldn't find you online at all. No news clipping, nothing. So for anyone who, like I did, we had just moved into our new area. If you were church shopping, I wouldn't be able to find your church. So that's something to think about, right? Especially when life now is so hybrid, so digital. I mean, and people always say, "Oh, John, yeah, I'm older. I'm not really digital hybrid." So how do you communicate with your doctor, right? During the pandemic, was it all virtual? Think about your pharmacy, right? It's hybrid. When you're driving around, if you're driving the city or even walking and you're going onto your GPS. Your life is hybrid, like it or not, really is, right? Shopping, all sorts of things. So, and then another bullet is something called disciples group, and that's really to help you with social engagement. Right now, if you are online, most churches, even here on this, even our big churches down here, you're really just broadcasting, right? You're really just pushing out content or messages, and no one's responding to you. No one's really having conversation. So the disciples group addresses that for those people. And then so I'm just going to move on to the next slide, because so I really want you to kind of look at this and kind of think about this. And this is really the essence of this program. Okay, and as we go through the webinar, really think about it. It's for our churches to ask for more helpers from the community to assist the church in doing more good. As they get more helpers, the churches grow. That's how the churches are growing. That's how all these churches organically, cross-denominationally, are growing, right? What I've done in this program is formalized it, systematized it. The churches that are growing are asking for more volunteers and helpers in their community. Most of your churches are asking for volunteers all the time, but in your church. And after a while, they get burnt out, right? So it's a problem if you really think about it. So you really need to get other volunteers from your community. And you'd be surprised how many people want to help, especially if you make it simple to help, right? So, okay, the Quick Leap program. This is my church. I said, so in 2022, we had no new family. In 2023, we had 9 when I took this picture. Now we have 12, 13. We also, because some of the, many of them are young, little ones. We also got a couple of teenagers, and then my wife turned to me just a couple of weeks ago and said, "John, you know, you're the kind of like the church expert. So what are we going to do with these handful of couple of teens that we don't really minister, we don't have a Sunday school for?" So anyway, I'll talk a little about that case study in a moment. But so the Quick Leap 10-day program is really part of the 30 days. In this webinar, we're going to focus mainly on growth. We're not going to really talk about, you know, I touched upon social engagement a little bit. I will touch upon follow-up a little bit. I'll touch upon promotion a little bit. But we're really focused on growth, right? So, and just get rid of it. Okay. So, so the goal is in 10 days for you to get 2 new neighbors and visitors. So last year was our full year of the Synod Growth Program. And we learned a lot from our growing churches. And they shared with me, obviously, some of the challenges they went through. And one of the challenges was, you know, yes, John, you know, the 30-day program, we're getting at least 2, 3, even more visitors and neighbors, you know, every month. But we're having a problem. We're having trouble following up. We're having trouble getting contact information. I'm sure you're having the same trouble. If you're getting visitors to your church, how do we get the contact information? So toward the end of the year last year, we started to address some of these challenges. So we made some improvements. And this webinar really talks about all the different improvements in the program. So how do we address this, right? We created something called the touch point. It's these activities like the food pantry. And I'll talk about other ministry, right? So with the touch point, which is a little unusual, it's a activity that draws new people to your church, but at the same time, you exchange contact information and start a new friendship. It happens all in one step. Like my churches, that were having a challenge of getting new visitors, but then they were having trouble getting their contact information and then following up with them. So touch point is a relational interaction, right? That's how I'm defining it in this webinar, where you attract new people to your church at the same time you're collecting contact information and starting a new friendship, all at once. So when we made that change in our process, guess what happened? Not only were our churches growing, they were growing faster. And that's how the 10-day program came about. So, all right, first 3 days. So we're going to go into the nuts and bolts, which that's really what I prefer. Usually I kind of rush through and how this program works and everything. I have to force myself to slow down because I'm a nuts and bolts data result driven kind of guy. And so for your first 3 days, you're going to identify a touch point outreach and pick one. I have 8. I have hundreds, but I just picked the top 8, 10. I couldn't squeeze in 10, 2 more, but because my slide wouldn't fit and I didn't want it all to be words. Many of you are already doing this, right? Many of you have a food insecurity ministry, either collecting food, a food pantry, right? If you're thinking about drawing families, think about a pet pantry, a nursery pantry. So many of my churches have a food pantry and a nursery pantry, all pet. So for those who already have some of these ministries, outreach in place, you might have a challenge, right? The person who's running that ministry or that program has been doing it for a decade. And they may not want to integrate this new way of attracting new people, right? They've been doing it for 10 years. It works. I don't know this 10-day thing that's gonna, it's gonna add to my work, right? That might be a challenge for you. Obviously, it was a challenge for some of my churches who already have some of these touch point outreach, right? So the problem is that many of these outreach were not in that touch point process. They're not drawing new people really because they're not opening the community. Think about my first case study I shared when I started asking people in my community, my friends and family, to help with the food pantry. So if you're thinking about your food insecurity ministry, are you doing that? Are you asking for more helpers from the community to help? Probably not, because if you were, your church would be growing, right? It's all the different ministry, the children's ministry, or the people in your children's ministry asking for help from the larger community, right? Your choir, are they inviting people from the community to join? And how are they doing that? If you look at, if you have time and you look at FPC Metuchen, New Jersey's church, the 1,000-member church, you'll see everything is invitational. Everyone's constantly drawing new people from the community into these programs and ministry, right? So if you're starting, pick one. And unlike most webinars where the person just shares the information with you, this webinar, I will follow up with you. I will help you get started because it's new. And you're going to have, it sounds pretty straightforward, but there's going to be little challenges here and there. And I could help you overcome them very easily because this, in the past few weeks, I have introduced this program to over 100 churches. Just this past few weeks. So there's hundreds of churches doing the same thing. So they're having the similar challenges. So I can help you with that, right? Okay. So once you've picked one of these outreach, so just to address that, let's say you have a food pantry and the person in the food pantry has been doing it for over a decade. They don't want to change. They don't want to add this. So my suggestion to you maybe is to add a nursery pantry with your food pantry. And that could be the draw and apply the new process to it, right? So if you let's say you're starting from scratch and you just pick one of these. And this is what I call the indicators of success. whenever I start with the new church, with the new process, okay, this is why I look at. Let's say they pick the food pantry. Let's say they pick wellness meetup. So I could share with you another case study. So back in August, after I moved from New Jersey to upstate New York, the weather is very different, right? So in New Jersey, during the pandemic, I started a tennis group. And it was, by the time I left, it was up to about almost 30 people. And we played tennis all year round. Because like I said, in Jersey, we hadn't had snow in 5 years. And it really wasn't that cold. We still played. But as I moved up to upstate New York, I'm older. I just can't keep up. I really, I just really can't. My joints won't. But I still want to remain active. And I was looking at maybe doing pickleball. So it was really popular. It was all over the news at the time, and still is, I think. So I decided to do a pickleball meetup. So I wasn't sure if anyone was going to be interested. Would it be, and then also, how do I connect church with that? And I'll talk a little bit about that. So what did I do? I went through the indicators of success. That I have 3 people excited about this new ministry.
It's supposed to be next Saturday.
So yes, I was excited. I found out that another person in my church was a retired gym teacher, and she's been playing. She had been playing pickleball for at least a year, and she was willing to teach. So I had another person who was excited, and then we met a new friends in upstate New York, and one of the husbands wanted to play. I was like, okay, I got 3 people excited, right? It wasn't quite 3 members, but there was 2 members, and that's okay. Check. First indicator of success. And then, are there 3 people excited, willing to organize your touch point outreach? Yes, I was willing to organize it. The other member, Penny, her name's Penny, she was willing to organize it. And some of the church leaders were going to, yes, they will put funds toward it. So that's part of, willing to organize and set up. So check, number 2, right? Indicator of success. So number 3, at least 2 other church members who are willing to invite their friends and family. Okay, this is a huge indicator of success. When we share that we want to start the pickleball ministry wellness meetup, we had at least 2 people who said they will invite a friend, family, or neighbor to join us or to help us, right? Now, this is the key. Now we're inviting the people, more helpers from our larger community. That's a huge indicator of success. And then as I started talking to people, right, there were 2 people who were really, Patty, who's kind of our promoter at church, said, yeah, I'm going to promote this everywhere, and then our I think worship leader also said, yes, she had friends. She's the one who did our who invited her 3 friends from the gardening club way back in December, and they will help promote it. Yes, absolutely, right? So I just checked off most of the key indicators of success. So if you are thinking of doing a touch point outreach, right? If you could check off all these indicators of success, chances are it will help your church grow. It will bring new people in, right? And number 5, right? You gauge the effectiveness if it could draw new people, it could enrich people's lives, and help you make new friends. Right? One of the data points I always point out is that, that we know of, that why are churches shrinking, right? Why are they dying? And one of the main reasons that people don't feel enriched. I know with pickleball, I'm enriching people in it. You know, it's a health, right, thing, keeps me active. And then friendship. People are not making friends anymore in church, right? So those are the two data points we want to address here. And the third, really, you know, if you want your church to grow, you have to be able and effectively invite new people to your church, right? So that's the first 3 days. So I will help you with this. So after the webinar, reach out to me, and I'll try to reach out to you. I believe there's a lot of churches that are on this webinar, which is, you know, it'll take me a little time to reach out to you if you have not reached out to me yet. Okay. So first 3 days, that's done. Next 3 days, get the word out. Okay. Activate WOM campaigns, word of mouth. You're going to do this regularly. No longer are we going to, you know, have church members be passive, you know, especially post-pandemic. So many of us watch church TV, including myself, right? You know, for a long time, it was, you know, especially during pandemic, it was just, you know, in your pajamas, you get, and you turn on the computer or on, you know, the TV or whatever, and you watch church, right? So not only are you going to ask your members to come to church, of course, on Sundays, you're going to ask them to help invite people to church, friends, families, neighbors. And if they're uncomfortable or they don't want to, I mean, when I first started this idea in FPC Lewiston, my new 40-member church, you know, many of the session members were like, John, you know, all our friends, I don't know who to invite. You know, all our friends already go to church. And in their case, yeah. But I will tell you the data in the United States is only 1 out of 4 people go to church now, you know, regularly. So chances are when you ask someone, if you ask 4 people, 3 of them don't. So go ahead and ask, right? And then if you're uncomfortable, you feel that they're, you know, then help promote the church. Share regularly what the church is doing, how wonderful your church is, you know, what are all the good things you're doing. So come to church, invite someone, or help promote the church. You're going to activate your members to action. And guess what? Those churches that were growing online during the pandemic, that's what they did. They activated their members online, right? So word of mouth campaigns. So let's see, I'm kind of so other thing that's really important, during this past Christmas season, all our growth churches followed a simple strategy. I think I sent that to Gloria. I think also I sent that to Jeff, because those are the 2 churches I just started working with, is to ask all your church members, you know, to give you a name of someone they would invite to church Christmas service or help or promote it. And then to actually get their contact information. So the church could now send out formal invitations to everyone. Please join us for our Christmas service, right? Or if you're unsure of your friend, you drop off a little flyer or you text them a little invitation. Hey, our church has Christmas service. I don't know if this is a tradition you follow, but we would love to have you. You're helping promote it, right? So now you have all these names. Now you're asking your members to help you gather these contact information. You're developing and building a new contact list. In marketing and communication speak, this is what we call a warm market. Companies, businesses, organizations paid huge money to develop a warm market, right? This is key, because now, guess what? That tiny church that only had 15 members in upstate New York, I just helped. I can't think of the name. I wish I could. They almost doubled their membership in like a month. The worshipers, I should say, correction, right? What they did, they didn't want to die. They didn't want to close the door. So they only had 15 members. So they all were very motivated to identify someone for Christmas service. Now they're going to spend 2024 reaching out and connecting with those 15 new people and draw them close to church. That's the strategy. So by the end of the year, probably sooner, they're going to double their membership in only a few months, right? That would be incredible. I'm checking on them all the time. I'll keep you updated. So the goal of WOM is to create buzz. If you walked around Metuchen, New Jersey, shopping, whatever, on the streets, in the schools, at sports events, you will hear someone mention our church, FPC Metuchen. The buzz was so great, right? You would hear it just throughout the community. So one thing we also did with the food pantry, once it really grew, we had a food collection bin in every business in town. We even had one in the city hall. Church coaches on the weekends when they play soccer, softball, whatever, bought a FPC Metuchen food collection bag to those sporting events. Imagine the buzz. Imagine the word of mouth. What you created is all these mini billboards throughout town. So, I don't know, what the percentage of members that support the FPC Metuchen Food Pantry. First of all, for many, it's not now known as Metuchen Community Food Pantry, not FPC Metuchen. I would say probably 90% of that food pantry is volunteers come from the community. Maybe less than 10% are church members. Huge draw for new people, right? So word of mouth campaign, activate your members. They come to church, then invite someone, or they help promote the church. Please do all three things. Really strongly encourage that, right? The other thing, RSVP all activities. No matter how simple, how minor. You come to coffee hour, RSVP. You're coming to Bible, RSVP. Everything has an RSVP because what you've put in place is a way to continually and systematically collect contact information, right? You do that automatically now for everything. So you're constantly building that warm market, that new potential group of worshipers and members that you could reach out to and follow up with every month, right? You connect with them, you uplift them. So promotion process. And this is what I do. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about how we got our 12 new families from FPC Houston. This is exactly what we did. So when we started the Sunday school, we asked everyone to promote it, talk to the friends, family. So we sort of immediately got a couple of kids right away. So and even with our small church, we had what we call hubs, right? The group of people who are in choir, the group of people who are deacons, and all the other ministry, right? If you have a food pantry ministry, the people who are involved with your food pantry, right? If you have that group that helps your local nursery center. I know some of you have that, right? So all there's people who are kind of in charge or leaders of these groups. Reach out to them and ask them to help you reach out to the people that are involved in their little groups to help invite people and to promote what the churches do, right? So that's what we did. So we got a couple of kids right off, they're great grandkids because most of our members are seniors, right? And also, maybe invite someone to church day. If you have an event coming up, invite a friend day, or you have a little jazz concert, or I know many of you do music events. as I looked. So, make that day invite a friend day, or, someone they know day, right? Whatever you do, if it's a community service thing, ask your local newspaper to post it. That's usually free because there's usually a community bulletin in your local newspaper or press, right? Put out a press release. That's kind of old fashioned, but that might work in your community. And then this was a huge thing. Some of your members are already in social media groups. I know in my town, FPC Lewiston, there is a Lewiston town Facebook group, that shares what's coming up with the weekend events. They even share some news. Oh, so-and-so's business had some sort of issue, or watch out for this pothole on so-and-so street. You have a social group in that. Have your members, if you're part of that community, your members some of them should already be in that group, like our church. And we posted our church activities in that group. Please join us for our new family mission meetup, where we have designed community service activities for families and kids of all ages. Just come. And our first family mission meetup was to make goodie bags for handicapped and homeless veterans. And that's a big issue up here in upstate New York, right?
John,
yes.
Hi, we are coming up to the 11 o'clock hour.
Okay, I am going to, so you can look at this. I'm going to go to the next one. Thank you so much. I have this huge clock next to me. I didn't even look over. So checklist, last 3 days. Thank you so much. Just go through the checklist, right? And really focus on your indicators of success. Check with the organizers who are putting together, right? And follow those different promotional campaigns. And that's it. Last 10 days is how many visitors? Please reach out to me to help you with the assessment of your program and implementing it. And now I'm going to do the Q&A. So I'm sorry I went long a little bit, but those were the most important parts. So the rest of them is all. So if you have any questions, we have maybe 5 minutes. So I hope I explained it well, and there was. Thank you, everyone. Oh, Deborah, I think you have Nancy, please go ahead.
Deborah first, then Nancy next. Deborah?
Yes. Go ahead, Deborah. You can unmute. Could you Nancy? I know Nancy's unmuted. Deborah, could you unmute yourself? Hi, Deborah. I can't see if you have a question. I think you're still muted.
She is not muted, but we can't hear her. So
Okay.
when we move on to Nancy, Deborah, when you get your sound in order, we'll circle back to you.
Yeah, you can also maybe put the question in the chat if you want. Go ahead, Nancy. Thank you.
Hi. We have a couple of hybrid activities. Our worship is hybrid, live and on Zoom, and we have a prayer group that's hybrid. But we were not, because of the early days of Zoom when there was hacking and, Zoom bombing and stuff like that, we haven't publicized the Zoom links beyond sort of our little circle. And I just wondered your thoughts about that, about the security issues, and whether we should just be putting our Zoom link out, on Facebook and the website and whatever.
Yeah, you'll need to go through some sort of screening, but is your service on Facebook Live? Is it streamed?
No, because we use multiple computers. It's
okay.
sort of
Yeah, I would suggest that you if you're using like a YouTube or you're streaming, you can stream it, then everyone can see, right? Then everyone's welcome. If you're not streaming, then post the recording, share it during the week, right? So you're public, and you'll be surprised, how many people will take part.
Thanks.
Next question.
Deborah, can you speak now? Can we hear you? We're still having a difficulty with Deborah. Louise?
Lewis.
Lewis.
Yes, yes.
Hi, Louis.
Hi, how you doing, John? I have a question. My church is a commuter church where we're coming in from Brooklyn, Bronx, Queens, and it's like we don't really have a physical presence in the community. Matter of fact, with my church, the community at first didn't want to have it there because we were serving people coming home from prison.
Okay.
So we do have like 1 or 2 people from the community that do come in, but it's a challenge to try to get people in that community to come into the church. And I'm thinking, after listening to this webinar, that although we're involved in a very good prison ministry, a vibrant prison ministry, I think that maybe we might need to reach out to people inside that community as well. But to go about it will be a burdensome task.
Yeah. I will say start small. If you notice that every case study I shared, you're starting with 2-3 people. It's never going to tax your resources. When I started my 40-member church, hey everyone, please invite someone. I was lucky to get 3 people to follow through. Now I'm getting more because people are used to it.
Eligible for compression stockings prescription.
So but yeah, I mean, I'm sure in your communities, commuting communities, many of those people will want to help with your prison ministry. So even if they just share gift bags, sending cards, notes, it's incredible. And then to tie young people in, and I didn't get a chance to talk about this. I'm a former teacher, so most of your school districts have community service hours. Imagine opening up to a youth ministry to send notes and cards and uplifting messages through that ministry. And they get community service hours. You will grow your youth ministry immediately. So,
John.
We have a question in the two
Thank you,
questions
John.
in the chat, and they're very much the same. Suggestions for congregations that are not meeting in person from Janelle Boyd and Deborah Watson.
Yeah, if you want to meet in person, I think it's a crucial part to your ministry. But we started this program when it was pandemic, so we had no one. It was all online. So many of these volunteer activities, these community outreach activities, we could do online and create what I did mention a disciples group. Jeff's church has a disciples group. Now she's getting authentic engagement. You can see how many people are looking at the posts. If someone likes a post, comments on it, you know exactly who, oh wow, we have 300 people on our Facebook page. Great. We have no idea who they are. Right? In the disciples group, every person is identified. You know exactly who they are. You can communicate directly with them. You can have small chat rooms. You can have small Zoom. You can have Bible study within those groups. It's a powerful, disciples group is powerful, especially if your members are all over the place. So it's another way of drawing everyone to one place. I hope I answered that question about the commuter.
Nancy has her hand raised.
I do, and I also put it in the chat. But my this has been spectacular. You
Thank
make
you.
it so simple, which is the first step for people.
Yes.
So that's all great. I am just curious what you have found to be the case between the online, internet, local news, Zoom, to actual bridging the gap to membership and donations.
Yeah. You will find that people, once you really open it up, first of all, being online hybrid is an incredible draw to your church. It's an incredible way to also activate your members, right? Who are watching TV. If you start giving them something to do that's simple, right? They start doing it. So then, okay, we're collecting goodie bags, making goodie bags for the homeless in the neighborhood, right? Oh, I have to swing by church and drop off a pair of socks. And then the socks becomes $10, $20, right? See, you start with things that it's easy for people. So part of reaching out to your community is also making it simple enough for everyone to take part in it, right? FPC Metuchen has a disciples group, but you would never find it. It's a secret group. It's so huge, right? It's all the past members, college students all around the world, everyone. It's so big that they can't manage it publicly, so it's a secret group. So you can't even find it unless you're invited to join that group, right? Most disciples groups are public because churches want them to join, right? But, these people are still financially supporting that church. So, and they live all over the world. I mean, our college students, it's a, suburbia, affluent town. So everyone's like living in Japan, Africa, everywhere. I mean, and they're still supporting it, right?
Yeah, may I just ask you, which this is all great to hear. My question would be, what mechanism do they use to reach out to those persons not actually physically in the town that can drop off the socks, whatever, to donate?
Yeah. Yes. So chances are, if it's not easy, they're not going to donate socks, but they might send you $5 for the socks.
And what is that mechanism, though, that they use to ask for that?
Oh, I would use whatever mechanism you already have in place. I wouldn't try. I'm always kind of shy about adding new tech or adding a new process. I'd rather have you integrate what you are already doing because people are comfortable and familiar with it. Trying to like churches that like, okay, we're going to spend $100,000 on this app and no one joins it, right? And because they're just not. So I would use whatever way you're collecting funds now and donations and integrate it into that. I hope I answered that, Nancy.
No. Well, if you come up with like new and exciting things that are not 100,000, we'd love to hear those too.
Yeah, I would optimize what you have. I would help you optimize what you have. And my goal would be double whatever funding you're getting now to it. So that would be my first. Deborah, you want to try again?
Yes, so hi. I had to change devices.
Yeah.
So you already answered my first question, which was how do you deal with churches where everything is mostly virtual and on Zoom? So you answered that question. So my second question is, you mentioned this situation, and this is the situation we have. When you bring people in the church, you really need to have services and ministries to address their individual needs. So when families come in with children, what do you do if you don't have a Sunday school or a children's ministry? How do you mobilize to be able to have those things in place so that when people come, they can connect to something?
Yeah, that's a great question. I will, part of it, I guess there's two answers I would give. I also work with some churches that are what we call home churches or house churches, right? Mm-hmm. So if they have kids, you can see they could maybe make a little play area for them. My church, like I told you during the webinar, we have a lot of young families, but now we have 2 teenagers. What do we do with that? Mm-hmm. Yes, we don't have, we're 40 members. We just don't have the resources to keep up with the growth. Mm-hmm. That's our challenge right now. So what we do for the teens, which my wife has made me the lead on, which is fine. She's like, okay, do something with them. So I have sort of a self-guided lesson, but also because the teens, we have like a device, so they're actually watching church. They're in the Sunday school room watching church on Facebook streaming. We have streaming, and there's also self-guided lesson that might relate to what the pastor's saying, but there's also a component of community service. I saw it with two teenagers, my lead teenager, Natalie, and she invited her boyfriend, which is great. Last Sunday, 2 Sundays ago, she invited 2 more friends. So in 1 week, I doubled. I just emailed her the indicator of success, right? Are they willing to invite someone? She's going to invite more. So by the end of the month, my 2 teens that I started with might be 10 teens, because they all want to take part in the community service hour. We've made it simple enough for her to, there's a reason now she's inviting her teen friends. In the past, it's like, none of them want to go to church. Why would you want to go to church? Right? Now there's a reason, because it helps them with the community service hours. Some school districts require, even college and university. My daughter who goes to school in Niagara Falls, she just told one of her friends who needed community service hours to graduate from university that the church would love for someone to help with the teen ministry. So Aaron is going to come. He's 35 minutes away and drive on Sunday to come with the help, because he needs that community service hour for his college degree. So there's a lot of things that our churches are doing wonderful ideas in doing. And I'm fortunate enough to really draw and uplifted, inspired every day by our churches and the things they're doing.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. I don't know.
Reverend Palmore, and then Reverend Coiter, in that order. And
Hi,
then
John.
Hi.
Thank you so much. You've answered most of my questions. One of the things that we've done at the church, my church, is for getting people to donate money. I send out a bulletin, the church bulletin, to all our email folk, even if they're members or not. And on the bulletin has the list of the 3 ways they can donate.
Yeah.
So that helps. But I have one question about some ministries. What if you have limited space?
Yeah.
You have a church that has limited space, because many of the churches have to rent out space just to help meet costs. So
exactly,
how do we do expanding ministries when you don't have a lot of space for people?
Yeah. You know, hopefully if you grow enough, you have the funds to build or get a bigger place. So there's a lot of churches are in partnership.
From your lips to God's ears.
Yes. There's a lot of churches in that I work with. They have partnerships with small businesses, and they utilize their space. The local karate school. We only use a couple of times a week when we have students, right? Could we come up with some sort of community, touch point activity where our church members want to do yoga or something, or what I'm thinking at my church, we just honestly, we're going too fast to have the resources, but just a walking, because I do 10,000 steps a day. So, and there's a lot of people, New Year's resolution, hey, that's a great idea. But in upstate New York, where I live, the last 3 days, we had about 12 inches in like 3 days, which is, for some people. But 20 minutes away from me, it's 5 feet of snow. I was just telling Mary, right? So you're not going to do walking around the neighborhood. You have to go to a church and do the walking, right? Or a facility like that, right? So look at your small businesses. There's a lot of space. A lot of them want the opportunity to attract new customers or clients, and to work with the church. it's kind of reassuring, there's a lot of sketchy people out there. A church, hey, I'm good with, right? So
Thank you.
thank you.
Jeff?
So you touched a little bit about something that I think partnerships and mentoring relationships or connecting. Do you do that with your churches, your church now? Are you working with other churches? Would you suggest that? Should small churches work with large churches or nearby churches in how this works?
Absolutely. New York City Presbytery is huge. Church just, I think of like, just international students, because my kids, all three of them are international students. They all go to university in Canada. So they're all international. Just the cultural exchange, right? So think about your churches, Manhattan churches, visiting Bronx churches visiting Manhattan. I mean, New York is huge. Those ministries about anti-racism, immigration. I mean, there are churches that are front line in doing those things. And your particular community is not really supporting that kind of ministry, or because it's not your community, but to understand another community. Wouldn't it be wonderful to have these church exchanges, right? And then partnership, yeah, it's a really effective way to grow your church, having these partnerships. Think of interns. Like I said, I said to churches, there are a couple of churches that have volunteer tech people. That's a great opportunity for your community, for young people to help with the business, the running of the church. Could be an internship. They're looking for work experiences in their resume, in building beyond just, and on top of the community service hours they could get, right? So I hope I answered that, Jeff.
We also had a question in the chat from Kristen Granberg, Reverend Kristen Granberg. What is the experience, if any, about the use of TikTok? And then we have a raised hand from Reverend Eric Toodles in that order. TikTok.
Sure. Yeah. For many of the churches I made assessment, I can't find your church online. So for those churches, if you want to have some kind of community exposure, consider a Facebook group. Especially if you're a small church. If you're a bit larger church, you might need both. TikTok. If you're great at making videos, go for it, right? I will tell you, many of my senior members wouldn't know how to start, right? But your young people would. The only asterisk on TikTok is that many governments are now banning TikTok in Europe, limiting the use, right? I will tell you from a technical point that it is a security issue. So do you want to invest time in something that might get banned? I don't know. But TikTok is very attractive to many of our young people in the community, and might be worth it just until, some sort of government regulation comes into play. And then it might still exist in a different kind of format. I hope I answered that for the TikTok folks. Yeah, I encourage every platform, but make sure there's people in your church that are using it. Because if no one's using it and no one interacting, if you have limited resources, do you really want to spend that limited resource on a platform that no one in your church, takes part in? Yeah.
Reverend Toodles is next.
Hi, Reverend.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I just want to share two things that we do at our church now that we're back in person and have been for the last 3 years. One of the
right.
things that we do is when we have visitors that come on Sunday, we have a visitor's card. So we collect all the information on that visitor's card on that particular Sunday. And within 5 days, I send a letter thanking them for their visit. And then we compile a visitors list that we have our evangelist team do a follow-up, sharing what programs that are coming down the pike and stuff like that. So that's
Excellent.
one way we keep in contact. The second way that we have keep in contact where people can get donations, our church has Zelle, and we
Yeah.
put that Zelle information out there as a way to entice people to donate to our church. So those are two things I wanted to share with the group that we're doing at St. Albans, and it has been pretty
Wonderful.
effective for the last 3 years.
Yeah, it's wonderful. If it works for you, definitely. Based on data, contemporary styles, relationship building and such, most people no longer fill out those cards, no longer fill out those forms on the website. People just don't communicate that way, especially nowadays with all the scammers and spammers. People are reluctant to share their contact information that way. They don't know who's seeing the cards, who's on the other end seeing the forms. But if they're signing up for your food pantry, they're sharing their contact information, right? So, and all these financial platforms, right? You also have to be careful, right? There is a Zelle scam out there, so you have to be cognizant of these different scams out there too. It's a security issue. So. Hey, I think
that's it. I don't see any raised hands.
Wonderful.
Nothing in the chat other than is this recorded, and I assured folks that it is and would be shared with the full presbytery.
Yeah, please put it in our pastor and leaders group, and please join our pastor. Like the disciples group is a great way to stay connected, share what you're doing in your churches, like Pastor Toodles, sharing and such. It's just, and I think Mary would really appreciate being able to stay in contact with everyone.
It looks as if Reverend Espinosa had something to say.
Yes, yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, now, thank you, John, for all the experience you share with us. I have just a questions. Everything you state today is look to us that there is no magic formula to allow the church to grow up. This is teamwork, hard work, to keep a good system of communications, healthy communication. Yeah, but how can we do or apply this formula to a church that they have a lot of programs like a sport program, senior citizen program, children care program, but none of that is running by the church. You're receiving benefits of that. And they have only 3 young elderly ladies running the whole system of administration of the church with no Sunday service. How can we apply these systems to a church in that condition in order that we can move up?
Yeah. No, I've worked with, churches are very averse to change. So churches that come to me for help, they're about to close their doors. Most churches that come to me are in that kind of situation because they wait for the very last second because they don't want to change. And so I work with a lot of churches in those situations. Some of them transition to home churches and house churches, and they grow that way. I would need to, in a church in that kind of situation, that very stressful, dire situation, I would need to work with the people individually and find what will reinvigorate you and have that passion, and we build from there. And we may build, I'm helping a church who just sold their building, pretty much closed down, transitioned into a home and house church. And the pastor can't believe it. For the first time, her church is growing in so many years, because now they don't have a building. And now it's a home and house church, but they've grown, which is wonderful. So that's kind of my answer. My answer would be, I would need to talk to the people, and and you probably would need to reach out to your presbytery and say, hey, are we going to be able to continue to grow? Right. And so I hope I answered your question.
Yeah,
But yeah, but this process is very straightforward, and maybe even simple, but it's very effective.
Yeah, thank you. I believe that in order to follow up what you said, and our presbytery to keep an ear on what you said, and to provide this information to many of our administration commission we have, in order they can have the church where they are placing now working. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, please share the recording to all your church leaders. So
we have a hand raised from Deborah Watson and Althea Yapan, and in the chat, folks are wanting to know how to join the pastors and leaders group. Is there a link you can share?
Yeah, I will send that. I think is that if you could send it in the follow-up as well, the link to it.
Certainly.
So, you just have to click and then you join. That's really so. Who has the question next?
Deborah Watson, and then Reverend Althea Pond, in that order.
Yes, my question is, how do you work with individual churches? If our church wanted to work with you individually, how can
Yeah,
that?
you just email me. We'll set up a free consultation. I will get you started for free. This is not a regular webinar. It's all hands on. It's my calling.
Thank you.
Yes, Pastor Pond.
Hi, good morning, and thank you for everything you shared today. I was just thinking about something that you said in relationship to being connected to the community, maybe community organizations that might already be utilizing your space for meetings, but they can't really give anything because they're small, not-for-profits. And you might do something with them maybe once a year or so. And they know you, they know the church, but it hasn't garnered any increase, so to speak, in membership. In part because some of them already had their own churches, but you do things over the years together, but that's about the beginning and end of it. You do the event is over until the next event.
No, that's a great question, because many of you host the Scouts, AA, all sorts of other organizations, but you don't grow from it. I mean, my church I live on Grand Island, and Island Presbyterian Church has an AA group, and they're friends with all the members, but they've never invited any of them to church, which is kind of crazy. They've been there for like, I don't know, 20 years. And so just recently, I suggested, since in the AA group, there's a certain therapy, right? They have to follow certain steps. Take one of the steps and kind of integrate it into church ministry. So one of the church ministry now, they do a therapy arts workshop. Guess what? The AA people are coming into the church ministry. My church, we host the Scouts. We also have a scavenger hunt in the church. So all the brothers and sisters of the Scouts who are during Scout, they're running around our church, finding all the scavenger hunt things, right? They go to the church office to pick up their little prize, or they email, call, text the church as we collect their contact information, right? were always collecting contact information so we could follow up, right? Now, some of them are starting to come to our church. The Scouts been there for over a decade. No one's ever thought of coming to the church.
I understand. And we don't have that type of, we don't have Scouts or AA, but the Community Improvement Association meets and other meets, and we do invite them when we have our concerts, or if we have something special at the church. We're actually on one of their mailing lists. When we have something special, I can call them up and they'll post whatever the event is on their mailing list. But I was just thinking, and yet it still hasn't, even though we do have a connection, we still haven't increased membership from them in that way. So maybe we'll talk offline one day.
Yeah, I mean, quickly, it needs to be something consistent that enriches their lives, right? If you think about what I talked about, my pickleball, we meet once a week. You know, the pickleball group has now we have almost 30 members. In the next month, it will surpass the membership of the church. I mean, so these are all potential new worshipers, but we all meet for fun once a week. That consistency, right? It's just Penny and I who runs it. Well, we just play pickleball, and then they play pickleball, and we open the gym to let them play pickleball. Now, it's crazy. Our church is a 40-member church, and the size of our church, if you ever go and check on, it's the size of a football field. It's crazy that it's that size for 40 members. You know, the gym that we opened up, it had been used in decades. When I said, oh, let's play pickleball, the session members like, oh, you have to wait, John. We have to get rid of the bats in the gym, right? Like, so we could open up to public. So
we have a comment in the chat from Elder Shirley Fleming. For churches looking for food donations and they are not receiving enough, look into Food Bank of Greater New York, join their program. You'd be surprised how many people in your community you will attract to the church.
Yeah.
Friends, I've also put in the chat John's email address, as well as a link to the Facebook Pastors and Leaders group that John has referred to throughout his time this morning. And I believe, Mary, you had your hand raised?
Yes, I was really just going to reinforce what you've said about the Facebook link in the chat, and just encourage you all to be part of that group. I am an administrator on it. Izette is an administrator on it. John is, and things that you would like to post, you'd be surprised. Everybody would love to read it, share, gain ideas, and it's a good mechanism for us. That's our
wonderful. Yeah,
the link there.
Our Manhattan churches could talk to our Brooklyn churches. Our Brooklyn churches could talk to our Queens churches. How great would that be? Thank you, everyone. And we went over by 30 minutes.
Well, I was impressed with the questions and the thought that's into this, and the unity of desire that we all have for our churches to grow, to be part of the community, to be connected. That unites us as a presbytery, and that is a good thing. And it's a wonder. We, at the largest point of participants, I counted 53. That is remarkable and really worthy of being proud of. And that's a great beginning for us.
57.
So, blessings, and thank you all.
Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful weekend. Stay safe.